people to lead in our community, to take care of our needs, to make sure that our community is safe. Lord, these folks spend hours, and we just want them to know how much we appreciate that. But most importantly, they are serving as you have taught us to serve, with your grace as the foundation. Continue to lead, guide, and direct us, Lord. May we be forever reminded of who we are and whose we are. And for Matt and Courtney, Lord, they're here and we can see you in them. We give you thanks for them. May they know how important they are as a child of God. Bless us, Lord. Keep us healthy. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for being here, sir. We appreciate it. Item 2 on the agenda is to call the meeting to order and announce that we do have a quorum present, so we will call the meeting to order at this time. Item 3 is the pledges of allegiance to the United States and Texas flags, proudly led tonight by Councilman Kevin Cleveland.
Thank you. If you would, join me for the pledge to the U.S. and Texas flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you for that, Councilman Cleveland. Item 4 on the agenda is items of community interest. Sharon Hayes.
Yes, sir, Mayor. I have 2 things I want to talk about. First of all, Thursday night we will have our Meet Me at the Park event, and that's at Cherry Park. That is 5:30 to 7, and so we welcome all of our departments to be out there to help inform folks about what we do. I think Melinda will be out there taking applications for boards and commissions, so if anyone is interested, we would encourage you to come out and visit with us on that. That is Cherry Park on Thursday evening, so I hope to see you there. And the second item I have, it is a real pleasure tonight to welcome a special guest, and that is Matthew Good. And we are happy to have Matthew and his mom here tonight. But I've been told Matthew loves politics and loves to quiz people about their knowledge of former presidents.
That's a true statement, Council.
I've been told that Matthew loves to watch documentaries and about presidents and to talk to others all the time about that. So Matthew also has a companion named Dooley, and Dooley could not be with us tonight, but he is a skill companion dog. And so some of our departments put together a few gifts for Dooley and Matthew, and those are over against the wall. And so Matthew, again, we'd like to welcome you back anytime you want, and thank you for being here tonight.
How about a round of applause for Matthew? Matthew really is a secret shopper in any council, anything that we do improperly or he doesn't agree with, he will let us know first thing in the morning. Right, Matthew? All right. Thanks again for being here. We appreciate it. Item 5 on the agenda is presentations and proclamations. 5A is a housing study report to be conducted tonight by Stinger Consulting.
Yes, sir. Tonight we have Naomi Burns with us, and she is with Stinger Consultant. And Naomi led our committee for almost a year. The council had appointed a committee last year to look at some housing issues, and so Naomi's going to present the findings of those.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, City Manager Hayes. I'm glad to be here this evening. A little bit about myself. I've actually spent about 20 years plus, I hate to say that out loud, but I have, in the affordable housing industry, working with housing authorities, cities, and counties in the provision of affordable housing programs and the development of affordable housing. And so I was honored when City Manager Hayes reached out to me and engaged Stinger Consulting to assist with the subcommittee that was created by City Council. You have received a short report that's a summary of the activities that the Housing Committee has taken. I understand that I am not to read the report because you can read the report yourself. Instead, what I will do is just highlight some items of the report and then provide some color, because I think that there were several really good conversations and points made by various members of the Housing Committee that are relevant not just to this report, but to the actions that the city takes moving forward. You are aware of the purpose of the Housing Committee and the background, obviously. One of the main things, though, that I think the Housing Committee was really formed to look at was the provision of affordable housing within the city of Weatherford. About a year and a half ago, there were a number of developers that came to Weatherford as a result of some changes in the statewide qualified allocation plan for the provision of low-income housing tax credits. It made Weatherford a very desirable place to apply and pursue the development of affordable housing. And this, I think, encourage the city to take a very proactive stance in its approach to not just the tax credit developers, but the approach to affordable housing in the city as well. So we looked at a number of different things. The committee was comprised of various council members. Thank you very much, Council Member Wilder and Tucker, for your service on that committee, as well as a number of community stakeholders and leaders and city staff. And I think we had a very good broad base of interest. One of the things that we wanted to ensure within the committee was that we were looking at it from not just a social service perspective, but also from an economic and community development perspective. And so there's a very a really broad base of information that was provided from all parties so that we could have a very thorough discussion about the affordable housing needs in Weatherford. Several of our first meetings really just talked about the concerns. And one of the things that we found when we discussed a lot of the early concerns was that many of the concerns were very specific to certain demographics within the community. So those individuals that served households that were extremely low income or had a need for a large number of supportive services had one set of concerns. There was another set of concerns for kind of like the workforce housing and the workforce demographic. And then there was a different set of concerns coming in again from the city side for the economic and community development impact that you feel with affordable housing and some of the services that go around it. So we tried to consolidate what those concerns were to some very, very simple points. I think bottom line, basically what the committee determined was that in the city of Weatherford, there is growth. And with that growth comes some of these challenges. And some of those challenges can include an increased cost of housing, which is difficult for families that are at certain income levels to be able to afford. So how does the city then approach ensuring that there is a sufficient supply of housing for its lower income individuals as well as the higher income demographic that is within the city? We wanted to make sure that S is not supposed to be over there. It actually is part of the whole word demographics, but we wanted to put some context in the demographics. And one of the interesting things that we saw was that the income that's up here for 2017 is a household median income, about $56,000. That's actually lower than the Parker County median income. So the city of Weatherford is almost starting at a little bit of a disadvantage because your median income within the city limits is lower than the county. You have about 43% of your families that are at or below $50,000 annual income. And that equates to, for single individual, about $24 an hour, or for two-person earning family, about $12 an hour per person. And we really wanted to make sure that as part of the committee's discussions, that we came to an agreement of the demographic that we were trying to target, because there was a lot of concern across different demographics. So bottom line, in the end, what we decided as a committee was to focus on those families that are earning at or below $50,000 annually, a little below the median income, and it was also a income point that would then correlate to a housing cost point and then a rental cost point that we could focus on. And if I'm talking too fast, please stop me. We spent quite a bit of time looking at need, and I will say that there was a strong emphasis, specifically from Councilperson Wilder, about making sure that we used the data that had been provided and that we agreed upon the data, because there's often a lot of subjectivity when it comes to what is affordable or what the need is. And so we spent quite a bit of time working with the gentleman that provided the regional housing study that the council received a presentation on in 2018 to get some additional data points from him, and really wanted to look at what the need or demand within the city of Weatherford was. We could say what we thought the need was, but without the actual data, we didn't have a common ground. So we actually focused on, again, families at or below $50,000 annually, and then looked at the home values that would be considered affordable to those families, as well as the rental values that would be considered affordable. And affordable typically is defined at, for a family to be able to to spend 30 to 35% of their income on their housing costs. So when we looked at the demand, surprisingly, I think, for some of the committee, we determined that there is actually a great need for affordable housing for families, individuals over the age of 65. There was less of a need for families in the lower age demographics. And you can see here in the demand need that out of 258 units single family and 98 multifamily, as far as total need for that income demographic, 66% single family and 52% of the multifamily were within that elderly demographic. And so that, I think, was a little surprising, but I don't think that that was something that we were too shocked about, because we did talk to the Housing Authority and talked about some of the affordable housing properties that are within the city of Weatherford that are targeting elderly individuals, and the fact that they have extremely long waiting lists now. So that's one of the items that we looked at, was the need. We also looked at then the upcoming production within the city of Weatherford, and it's not listed on your slides, but it is in your report. We spoke with the city staff, and they indicated that there are about 4,500 units that are completed, under construction, or planned over the next several years. So there is a great number of units that are coming online. The concern becomes most of those units, if not all of them, are not targeted to this lower income demographic. So the need for this demographic continues to increase, while the supply that's coming in is actually targeted towards a higher median income. After the committee then determined what our baseline data points were going to be and what demographic we were going to focus on, we looked then at what the priorities we wanted the priorities to be within the committee. And you can see here that they really look at making sure that the city of Weatherford is proactive in its approach to being able to provide housing across the income spectrum. And to incorporate not just new housing, but also to look at the stock that you have now, which is an aging stock that may be considered affordable and sustainable today, but in 5 or 10 years, is it going to be realistically able to be used for families at a lower income demographic? So the priorities that we narrowed our focus to were to look at future housing needs, to work on increasing the affordable housing units for elderly individuals, to find ways that we could incentivize or encourage private landlords or private owners to work with families that are below 50% of the area median income, that moderate or low income demographic, to continue to work with the city to build capacity to approach this issue, to look at increasing homeownership rates, and then also finally, I think, to continue to work on maintaining the stock of the city of Weatherford that you have now, because the neighborhoods and demographics and characteristics you have are unique and special to the city of Weatherford. So it's not just about building new, but it's about maintaining what you have. And then lastly, what we did was we put together some proposed action items. And these were items that the committee felt that they would like to ask the council to move forward with in some form or fashion, whether it's through the council or I think primarily through staff and staff activity. One of the first would be to look at current city ordinances and regulations and find ways to either incentivize or encourage either the development of affordable housing or the retention, the rehabilitation of the housing you have currently, to ensure that it is sustainable in the long term. To look at developing a long-term strategy for affordable housing. Weatherford is the growth point within Parker County, and so as you continue to see growth, making sure that there's a plan to be able to ensure that future residents of all income levels have a place to be able to live, and to look at ways to get over some of those barriers, whether they're barriers socially, where people are unsure or they have perceptions about affordable housing that may be dispelled, whether it's education to the community, to work at ways to combat those. And then lastly, the committee would like to continue to serve as an advisory board to the city council so that they can continue to promote not only the education of the community in what affordable housing is, but also in some of the need and some of the provisions and solutions that could be out there for the city of Weatherford. Mayor, I tried to be very brief. I apologize if I got a little wordy at times.
That was great.
But that's basically the summary of what we did. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Questions from Ms. Burns, council? I think the report is comprehensive, very helpful. I know that the committee put a lot of work And thanks to our team members and staff members and community members. And we'll take this into consideration and do the best we can to meet this need.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for being here and for your help in the process.
Sure, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, at this time, we have a blue card filled out. Somebody would like to come forward and speak. Rosie Musinho. How'd I do? Okay, I'm working on it. Rosie, if you will, once you get settled, we can have your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Rosie Musinho, and I am the Executive Director at the Weatherford Housing Authority. Address is 1125 West Oak, Weatherford, Texas, 76086. I stand before you here today this evening to share information from the Housing Authority and to challenge the City of Weatherford to open to the idea of more affordable housing in Weatherford. The Weatherford Housing Authority administers the Housing Choice Voucher Program, also known as the Section 8 program. The Housing Choice Voucher assists families in paying rent. The program is 100% federally funded to assist families here in Parker County. The federal government provides approximately $3 million to this community for housing assistance and administrative costs. By taking the standard economic indicator of economic activity spent in the community of 6 times, there is approximately $18 million in total economic benefit at no cost to our community. We could lose this if we do not utilize the vouchers. Currently, there's 304 families on the wait list. During our fiscal year, October 1st, 2018 to September 2019, the Housing Authority issued 192 vouchers, 100 have leased up. The reason for not leasing up is due to the rents are too high. Families are moving to other counties. The need for affordable housing is high. The city has not supported affordable housing development in more than 15 years. The 3 affordable housing developments are 100% full with a wait list. All communities need teachers, firefighters, police officers, healthcare providers, landscapers, retail salespersons, just to list a few essential workers. Affordable housing ensures that such workers have safe, affordable housing within reasonable distance from their work. Housing that is affordable to working families and close to their places of employment is a critical component of a region's economic growth. Everyone should have a place to call home that connects them to the opportunities they need to thrive. And it's not just the community's essential workers who stand in need of affordable housing. The adult children of community residents who are just starting out in their careers, parents of residents who are on fixed income, disabled people, including veterans, need and deserve safe and affordable housing. Affordable housing is not public housing, which started in the mid-20th century. Public housing has put a powerful negative impact associated with social problems. Affordable housing is attractive mixed-income communities. Most residents cannot tell the difference between the market rate and the affordable units. And in closing, to be a successful family, a successful community, a successful country, you must take care of your own. I, the Executive Director of the Weatherford Housing Authority, invite other agencies, the City of Weatherford, along with the Weatherford Housing Authority, to start looking into partnering so that Weatherford can have more affordable housing.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Messinio. Item 6 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. 6A is consider approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting held September the 10th of 2019. Before we call for a motion, is there any discussion or corrections on the item? Hearing none, we'll call for a motion at this time. Motion for approval by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder. Let's redo that, y'all.
Hold on just a second.
Second by Jeff Robinson. Is there any discussion on the item before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time. Please indicate yea or nay, please. And it's passed unanimously. Item 7 is consent agenda items. There is 5 items on the consent agenda. Can we hear these as a whole, or does somebody choose to call one out individually for discussion? Hearing none, we'll consider the items as a whole. Is there any discussion on the package before we call for a motion? Hearing none, we'll call for a motion at this time. Motion by Curtis Tucker for approval, second by Councilman Cleveland. Any discussion on consent items before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time. Consent items pass unanimously. Item 8, public hearings. 8A is to hold a public hearing, consider approval of ordinance O2019-50 for a zoning district change from AG agricultural to C1 commercial, and a conditional use permit for mini warehouse self-storage at 3193 West Interstate 20, being a 9-acre tract out of the Hannibal Goods Survey, abstract number 536, City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, ZCH 2019-0017. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Caleb Kentner, Director of Development and Neighborhood Services. What you have before you today is a request by Mr. Tim Flowers. You have the complete staff report in your packet that outlines the request and what went before the Planning Commission. This went before the Planning Commission on September 11th, 2019, was unanimously approved with all 6 members present to approve the rezoning from AG agricultural to C1 commercial and issue a conditional use permit with the following conditions. One of the conditions was to prior to the occupancy of any new building, an 8-foot fence shall be provided along the eastern boundary to effectively screen the existing buildings and any new buildings proposed along the adjoining Diamond Ridge Ranch. We look at their proposal, the fence is located and highlighted here where that fence would be located. Also, prior to occupancy, the second condition was of any new building site will be made to conform with the perimeter along the frontage and parking lot area for all landscaping requirements as required by code. There were 2 issues that were brought up at the Planning Commission, just for your information. In regards to runoff issues was one of the concerns that was brought up during that time that was considered by the Planning Commission and addressed at that time. And that will be handled during the site development process to meet the city requirements. Also, in regards to the 8-foot fence, one of the reasons for the 8-foot fence requirement was in order to alleviate the maintenance between a fence and the property line that sometimes gets neglected in that area. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer any.
Any questions for Mr. Kettner before we have a public hearing?
I have one question for you. When they discuss the runoff issues, so if we change this from AG agricultural to C1 commercial, obviously that means there's going to be impervious ground put on the property. So does that change anything? Does that change any requirements when you go to do a conditional use permit, or you go to do changing this zoning regulation for? Because if I was going to put a plat before you for AG, it would be different than if I'm going to put a plat for you before commercial. So are there any, I couldn't find the research on that to ask myself, is there any change that would be, by doing this, that would inhibit once it goes forward to the platting process?
Yeah, as this process is the rezoning and it's already existing with multiple buildings on the property, any new development would have to come in and meet the minimum requirements for drainage. And I would defer the details of how the drainage site is reviewed to our engineers, and they could probably explain that better as it goes through site development, how that would be handled.
So they just do it at the plat. Drainage is only considered at the plat level, and it doesn't have any conditions on rezoning. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, this, Bill Smith, City of Weatherford Engineering. That is correct. It's addressed at the plat, and it's also addressed at the building permit stage as well. On this one, it's going to be a minor plat with one lot So there's probably not going to be a whole lot to review on the plating side, but when they submit for a building permit, that's definitely something that we consider. Anytime anyone proposes more than 5,000 square feet of impervious area, they're required to have an engineer provide a downstream assessment and have a drainage design.
Okay, that's where I got mixed up.
Thank you for so willingly coming forward, Mr. Smith. Any other questions for Mr. Kettner or staff? Hearing none at this time, we'll open a public hearing on item 8A exclusively. If anybody would like to speak on this item, please come forward at this time. 8A. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Council, any further questions or discussions on the item? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to approve with the 2 conditions.
Motion for approval by Councilman Cleveland for approval of 2 conditions. Pro Tem Wilder is the second with conditions, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Great. Any discussion on the item before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote this time on 8A. Passes unanimously. Item 9 is regular agenda items. 9A is consider and or act upon approval of ordinance O2019-48, adopting the city manager's proposed budget as amended by the city council for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019 and ending September 30, 2020. Questions or anything? Oh, hello.
Hello,
Jessica
how are you?
Doss. I'm sorry, I did the same thing
That's
you
fine.
last time.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm Jessica Doss, Finance Director. Tonight, we will be asking you to adopt the city manager's FY20 proposed budget. I'll be giving a very brief presentation on the final proposed budget before turning the floor over to you. We started this budget process with an initial presentation on August 13th, followed by a work session on August 27th. We did have 2 public hearings on the tax rate and 1 public hearing on the budget. For a quick review of the general fund, the proposed budget includes $38 million in revenues and expenses, only reducing our fund balance by $3,000. Of our $12.4 million ending fund balance, $1 million is reserved for comp absences, and $11.4 million is tied up in the 120-day reserve, leaving an available balance of $8,000. The FY20 proposed budget is balanced with a tax rate of 47.89 cents. I would like to note that there was 1 change to the ordinance. A division within planning and development was missing from the adopted amount, but the printed copy that you have in front of you has the corrected amount. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you for any comments, questions, and a vote.
That was brief.
Yeah, I try to make it brief.
It's also not the first time we've seen it, so. All right, questions for Ms. Doss? Somebody? Let me switch screens here. Hearing none, council will entertain a motion this time. For item 9A. Motion for approval by Jeff Robinson, second by Councilman Kevin Cleveland. Any discussion on the item before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote on item 9A. Indicate yea or nay, please, this time. Passes unanimously. Thank you so much.
Well,
Item 9B, consider and or act upon the first and final ratification of the property tax revenue increase reflected in the proposed fiscal year 20 Weatherford municipal annual budget. Ms. Doss, welcome back.
thank you. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Jessica Doss, Finance Director. So we have 2 items that we need to get through tonight to formally adopt a tax rate. The tax rate that we have discussed is a decrease in tax rate from last year, but is above the effective rate. Therefore, we are required by state law to have council ratify the tax rate increase that is reflected in the budget that has been passed. This is not a formal adoption of the tax rate, but this is the recognition of the increase in the tax rate resulting in an increase in tax revenue. So there is specific language that is required to ratify this, and I've provided it on the screen, and I believe it's also on your agenda report. And I would like to note that the amounts listed are with maintenance and operation and interest and sinking combined. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Right. Any questions or comments on the item? All right. Entertain a motion this time on item 9B.
I'll make a motion. I move that the FY20 proposed budget with a tax rate of .04879 per 100 valuation will raise more total property taxes than last year's budget by $742,970, or 6.2%. Of that amount, $287,364 is tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the tax roll this year.
Motion on the floor by Kevin Cleveland as presented. Mr. Tucker, is your
I
second
would
stated?
second, yes.
Okay, any discussion on the item before we call for a vote? Call for a vote at this time on 9B. Excuse me, before we call for a vote. About made a mistake. We do have a speaker card for Cindy Byington. Ms. Byington, was it this item you wanted to speak on, or was it related to item 9D? Okay, I thought so, but I want to double check before we call for a vote on the item. Where were we? This time we'll call for a vote on item 9B. Okay, yea or nay, please.
Paul, I'm
Yes.
sorry, a motion of order.
Yeah, so in your previous presentation, you said .4789, and this says .0478, yeah,
It's
7.
4879.
Okay,
This
so
one
the
is
last
correct.
time you were, okay.
Sorry.
I was making sure you kind of
I
threw
go
me off
back
for a
on that
second.
one.
Councilman Cleveland, your motion
good.
stand?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We'll call for a vote this time. Nine B passes unanimously. 9C is consider and/or act upon approval of ordinance 02019-49, adopting the proposed ad valorem tax rate of 48.79 cents per $100 evaluation for the 2019 tax year 2020 fiscal year.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, Jessica Doss, Finance Director. In conjunction with adopting the annual budget, the City Council is also required to adopt a tax rate. The proposed budget was balanced on a tax rate of 0.4879 cents, which is lower than our 2018 tax rate. On August 13th, the council voted on a proposed tax rate of 49 cents. However, that rate was not needed to balance the budget. We did have our required hearings on August 27th and September 10th. Similar to the last agenda item, there is specific language that is required to use to adopt a tax rate. So I've also provided that on the screen and on the agenda reports.
Questions on item 9C? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion at this time.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 48.79 cents per 100 valuation, which is effectively a 4.3% increase in the tax rate. This includes a rate of 33.93 cents for the operations and maintenance of the general fund and 14.86 cents in order to service the city's debt.
Motion on the floor by Councilman Cleveland as stated, second by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder. Any discussion or question on the item before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote on 9C at this time. 9C passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
9D is consider a preliminary plat, including waivers from certain requirements of Title 11 subdivision ordinance, specifically waiver from Section 11-5-5A for construction or reconstruction of adjacent streets for the 140-lot first phase of Ranches West subdivision located off Old Dennis Road, south of Browder Lane at its intersection with B.B. Fielder Road Extension, and being 34.12 acres situated in the John Davis Survey, abstract number 349, City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, SBD 2019-0032. Welcome back.
Mayor and Council, Caleb Kinder, Director of Development and Neighborhood Services. As stated, this is a preliminary plat request, and just to kind of give a little bit of background on this it came before you prior as a planned development with a zoning change at that time and a master plat that was also done at the same time with the concept plan. This is the preliminary plat of the first phase of that development. This went before the Planning Commission at their September 11th meeting with a 5-to-1 vote to recommend approval with the following conditions, including the three waivers, or two waivers then, and concept that is included in your packet, in your full staff report that's included. There were a couple of comments and concerns, just for your information, that was brought up at the Planning Commission regarding screening along the collector streets, which screening is required by code to be masonry screening along the collector roads or arterial roads as well. And the other item was in regards to drainage as well. This also was taken in account in their second phase, which is off-site for the first phase that is before you today. And And if you have any questions or comments, we'd be glad to answer any of those.
Any questions for Mr. Kettner on item 9D specifically? Thank you.
Two.
That's what we're here for. Mayor Pro Tem.
Sharon said I could ask these questions because they came up as a issue to me when I got a couple of emails. So I want to understand this. And James, if you could explain, there are two types of drainage, which I don't know if everyone knows that, but there are two types of drainage. So James, could you explain that first?
Sure. So typically the drainage that Bill Smith specifically speaks to is the drainage when it hits the right of way. And so that's all the stuff that the city handles within the public right of ways. There is drainage that sometimes occurs from lot to lot. Those aren't drainage issues we get into. Those are civil matters in between two individual property owners when it crosses the private property line.
So the only drainage issue that the city is concerned with is the drainage issue that goes into, the right-of-way. So my question to you is, they came as a planned development, and I know that everything goes in phases, but we've had problems in the past with Phase 1 goes in, and then we see that the Phase 1 created additional problems we hadn't anticipated when Phase 2 starts its process. So my understanding is, and I'd like for Bill Smith to confirm this for me, that when we look at this, we look as if it's completely built out. So we don't look at it really as just Phase 1 and Phase 2. We look at drainage issues for the entire scope of the project. Is that a correct statement?
That is absolutely correct. Yes, ma'am.
And so there's no way to anticipate until something is built whether it creates a drainage issue that we didn't plan or foresee. Is that a correct statement?
When we review these types of plans, we review the grading plan, which kind of lays out how drainage will flow from one place to another. And we have the engineer avoid lot-to-lot drainage when possible. If it's unfeasible, like if there's two lots that if they didn't go lot to lot and it would require like a 20-foot retaining wall, then we would potentially allow lot-to-lot drainage as long as it goes from one lot to one lot and then to a street. We wouldn't allow it to go one lot to one lot to one lot, then keep going down lots. So we want to get it to a public right-of-way as soon as possible. And that's things that we review during that process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Those are great questions. Any other questions? We do have two speaker cards. First is the applicant, Mr. Fletcher, Thomas Fletcher. How are you, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
Have your name and address, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Thomas Fletcher with Kimley Horn, 6160 Warren Parkway, Frisco, Texas. Appreciate the opportunity tonight. I have a quick presentation for you. So the zoning was approved back in April. It was approved as a planned development. Originally, we were requesting R1 zoning district, straight zoning, but there were concerns from the public that we agreed to revise our request to a planned development to address those concerns. Really the three concerns that were part of the zoning were resolving the storm runoff to the adjacent neighborhood Westover Village, constructing the public park within Phase 1, and providing a minimum of a 40-foot buffer to the southern property boundary. So this is the approved final master plat. Highlighted in yellow along the southern boundary is that buffer. The final offset there is roughly 60 feet, so it's about 50% greater than what was agreed to at the zoning. The public park is shown there just south of what is called Street J. It's just under 2 acres, and that would be dedicated to the public. The agreement there was that it would be dedicated to the public, but it would be owned and it would be maintained by the HOA, so there was not any additional financial burden to the city. And then we agreed that we would resolve the drainage issue that is on the eastern boundary there. So I've got some other exhibits to kind of show you. So basically, when we went through and did the design for phase one, we do all the design for the subdivision as far as the grading, because one of the things we have to look at is when we do the development, are we going to balance the cut and fills? We don't want to get in a situation where we have to bring in dirt or haul off dirt. That's very costly. So we've gone through and we've done all that. We've also gone through and done a design of an interceptor swell or channel to pick up the stormwater runoff. The current issue is that there's a big ridge on this property, and there is a very large drainage area that's draining to the east and currently going into the backyards and through the backyards to the right-of-way. That distance is about 500 to 600 feet off the property line. When we come in and do this improvement, then there will only be roughly 30 to 40 feet. So we will be cutting it down probably, we'll be eliminating probably 95% of the runoff that's currently going into those residents' backyard. And that is included in the construction plans with phase one. Here is a concept plan for the city park. It will have playground equipment, it'll have some fields, a covered canopy area, trails, and nice landscaping around the park. Old Dennis Road, so our original request with waivers, we did request of the city to waive the construction of Old Dennis Road until phase two of the construction, and we would like you to consider that. That's not what the staff's recommendation or the P&Z recommendation was to you, but what I'd like to do is talk about that a little bit. With the zoning and the developers' agreement to go and improve the drainage conditions to alleviate that off-site water, and then also build the public park in phase one, because when we were before you with the original master plat, we had the park in phase two, and we were just being made aware of some of those drainage issues that we agreed to resolve. So there are a lot of costs in phase one that we have to account for, and that weren't initially planned for. The other thing is with Old Dennis Road, the subdivision ordinance requires us to build our half section of roadway. So in our meetings with the city looking at this, it provides more benefit to the city as a whole and also to this community if we were to build the full section of the roadway for half the frontage versus half the section of the roadway for the full frontage. Basically, all our connection points for this development, phase one and future phases, all will eventually tie on to fully developed roadways. So everything south of our project where it's more rural, it will utilize the current rural section, and then as we develop and connect to the roadway system, we'll have the full improvements. So just to kind of give you an idea. So this exhibit shows the green. The green is actually what's required by code. So it's half of the roadway section for our frontage. The orange is the other half of the section. This section of roadway is about a $450,000 to $500,000 roadway cost. So if you take that and you look at, okay, if we were only building our half section, that would be about $225,000 to $250,000. In order to build the full section, we're taking on up to an additional about $250,000 in cost in phase one, if that's required, in addition to building the park in phase one and some of these other items. So we are here before you asking for you to consider our waivers that we submitted, which would include deferring the construction of Old Dennis to phase two. With that said, if there's any questions, we have collector and arterial along the perimeters and within the tract. We are proposing masonry to meet the city standards. The development is going to be Ranches West. It's going to have a ranches style theme. So our screening fences, our monumentation, all of that will kind of carry on that theme. But again, that's my presentation. We are asking you to consider the waiver to allow the construction of Old Dennis Road with phase two versus phase one, and I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Fletcher? I have one. So what staff is recommending, that's an additional $250,000 cost to you.
That's correct.
And that's pinching you with 140 lot phase one
So there's 131 residential lots, and then the remaining lots are open space lots in phase one.
Okay.
Along with and the parkland is included within that.
And you feel like that extra $250,000 is pinching your profit margin on 140 lots?
Well, no, I'm not saying that it's pinching the profit margin. I'm saying that so when we met with the city and we started looking at this, the old Dennis Road, there's coordination items. We shifted the roadway into our property more. So if you look at the right-of-way that's being set aside for the roadway, we're providing more than what the typical half section of roadway right-of-way would be. Early on in the conversations, we had meetings with city staff, the fire department and all, how the road would access. We would have 2 road connections to the north-south collector and BB filter, which provide adequate capacity from a transportation standpoint. So earlier conversations with city staff is that there was some support. Originally, and I don't want to speak for Bill, but originally the city staff said they were going to support the request. When we did the horizontal layout, realized that we could shift the road into our property more and build the road without having to go out and acquire additional right-of-way from our neighbors to the west. That's when staff determined that they wanted to require, that they were going to require requests that the old Dennis be constructed in phase one.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Fletcher? Thank you for your presentation, sir.
Thank you.
Question or conversation on item 9D, questions for staff?
Can we have a question for one of our other council gurus?
Say again?
Can I ask a question from one of our other council gurus who's in construction?
Absolutely, as long as it's okay with that council guru.
I didn't quite understand how when you take the hill and you put more houses on it, which is more impervious, how that would accomplish not putting water in other people's backyards.
So correct me if I'm wrong, this would be a question for you as you're designing it, but my understanding would be that as you divide the lots up, the goal is to not push one lot to the next lot to the next lot. So when you divide the lots up, the goal would be to push the watershed off of that lot to the street or the right-of-way, and then it would collect there and be taken off. And you're also going to be probably building up and leveling off to the back and having a smaller drainage. Is that correct?
So when we go through and do the drainage design and we do the lot grading, the FHA has different types of lot drainage. They have type A, which the entire lot drains to the right-of-way. It's picked up in the public right-of-way in the storm sewer system there and is routed from there. They have type B, which has a portion of the water that drains to the back of the lot. It could be draining onto an open space lot, an HOA lot. It could be draining to the lot that's adjacent to it. Generally, when we do the design, we look at the natural land pattern. So if you did if you've got, and this site has quite a bit of topography, it's got about 6 to 8% slopes across it. So if the land is already sloped in one direction and you're trying to build a lot to drain the entire lot to the road right-of-way, because it's going against the natural terrain, it creates a very large retaining wall. So what we will do is we will adjust the grading of the back of the lot to minimize that retaining wall, which is called FHA type B grading. As far as the adjacent properties and developments, as Bill mentioned earlier, we have to meet the subdivision ordinance for drainage. So we've done a downstream assessment. We've got a large detention pond. We've got about a 2-acre site that has about 10 acre feet of storage. So as we get a rain event, the water's collected in the underground storm sewer system. It's conveyed to our detention pond. Our detention pond will hold the water there and then release it to the floodplain that's directly to our east and southeast.
So those houses that are already there, that the water is apparently, you said, on the hill, draining down into their backyards, there'll be houses on either side, they'll go to a street and they'll collect underground and then go to the retention pond? Is that what you're
That's correct.
So it will take, what is the percentage you're anticipating it taking off?
We anticipate it's probably taking about 90 to 95% of the existing runoff off. So and this isn't the best, let me go to the master plat. If you look on the master plat, you have the north-south street that's just to the west of the boundary. All the runoff that currently goes to the east and is going into those backyards, it will be picked up in that street there, and it will be conveyed in an underground storm sewer system into the detention pond. So right now, and I'm not sure if, so right now where I drew the red line, somewhere in there is the high point. Right now, all that area is draining into those backyards. So now it will be picked up in that street, conveyed south into the detention pond, and then released into the creek.
Thank you for getting me there.
Thank you for getting her there.
Thank you, sir. We do have another speaker card for Cindy Byington. Cindy, come on up. You've been awful patient. Thank you. Cindy, once you get settled, if we can have your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes. Feel free to adjust as you need to there.
I know, every time. My name is Cindy Byington, and I live at 1245 Glen Court, Weatherford, Texas, in Westover Village Estates. Excuse me. My property backs up to the potential east side of Ranches West. I hope the email that I submitted earlier today will help shed some more light with our concerns. I understand that this evening we are focused on Phase 1, but with Phase 2 actually running adjacent to my neighborhood, Westover Village Estates. The approach to developing Phase 1 will determine the approach to developing Phase 2. As such, I feel that there are 2 questions that this council should consider. Please. To what extent will the development approach of Phase 1 affect stormwater runoff towards Phase 2? 2, what is the extent of the development of Phase 1 site grading affect the elevation of Phase 2 as it relates to the stormwater management of Phase 2 and appropriate screening that provides a proper degree of privacy because of the grade to the Westover Village Estates residents? I do believe that we could be good neighbors and we could build strong relationships if we address and resolve these existing problems properly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Byington. We appreciate your thoughts and comments. We have no other speaker cards on item 9D. If there are no further questions or comments from council, entertain a motion at this time.
Make a motion to approve with 2 waivers and a requirement. The 2 waivers are waivers granted only for the portion of the north-south collector, the proposed King Ranch Drive south of the proposed Haywire Lane. Second waiver is from constructing of a half-street standard section of Old Dennis Road along the entire western frontage of the site is granted in favor of constructing the full width of Old Dennis Road up to and inclusive of its intersection with proposed Kerrville Lane. And then the requirement that is added to that is Old Dennis Road and its intersection with the proposed Kerrville Lane shall be fully improved with Phase 1 as indicated by staff and consistent with the City of Weatherford Thoroughfare Plan.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Cleveland as stated, second by Curtis Tucker.
Yes.
With the waivers and the requirement. Okay. Any discussion or questions on the item further? We'll call for a vote on item 9D at this time. (9D) passes unanimously. 9E is consider approval of Resolution R 2019-23, authorizing the city manager to execute a local transportation project advanced funding agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation for funding of landscaping improvements along State Highway 171 South Main Street. Good evening, Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Terry Hughes, Director of Capital Transportation. If it would be appropriate, I would like to take a couple of minutes to review the background of our Gateway Improvement Program before I discuss anything about the resolution. Would that be okay with the Commissioner? No. I'm assuming it would be. So
Sure, you forgot to leave out the word brief, but we'll make that assumption.
The Weatherford General Plan was adopted in January of 2018, and it states that gateways create a sense of place, and the plan established gateway improvements as a high priority item. And to that end, in January of 2018, Weatherford applied for and received funding to beautify the medians along State Highway 171 or South Main Street, utilizing the TxDOT Green Ribbon Funding Program. At that time, funding was limited through the Green Ribbon Program, so our project was broken into two phases. Phase 1, starting at Interstate Highway 20 and going to Cleburne Avenue, which is shown on the general drawing that is shown on your screens. The first phase includes something unique, a sign icon that will be completely and totally funded separately by the city of Weatherford or by Weatherford. The sign itself will be located in the median just north of where College Park comes in. The median in that area is about 20 feet wide. The sign, as it's proposed and will be constructed, will be 15 feet wide and nearly 8 feet tall. It will be a white stone monument type sign with our new logo, which will protrude out from the stone. It will also be backlit so that in the evenings the sign will be lit and that Weatherford logo will jump out at you. The project Phase 1 is scheduled to start construction October 15th of this year. Phase 2 was always subject to question. We did not know when, if we could receive funding from TxDOT for that program. But it turns out that in May of this year, TxDOT announced another round of Green Ribbon funding for the 2020 budget year. We seized the opportunity and applied. And it is rare for a community to receive back-to-back funding awards in this type program, but Weatherford Phase 2 of the South Main or 171 project was selected. Phase 2 will continue the same motif, if you like, for the median beautification program by replacing the paved stones with native or near-native plantings, irrigation, and other aesthetic elements that are designed to create that sense of place we just talked about, and ultimately make the statement that Weatherford and True Texas are synonymous with one another. To that end, Resolution R 2019-23 authorizes the city manager to execute an advance funding agreement with Texas Department of Transportation. The agreement establishes TxDOT funding at $431,101, that is for the construction, and establishes Weatherford funding for design at $34,500.
Questions on 9E for Mr. Hughes? Hearing none, we'll call for a motion this time. Have a motion for approval by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder, a second by Mr. Jeff Robinson. Any discussion on that item before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time. Indicate yea or nay, please. Item 9E passes unanimously. 9F, consider authorizing the city manager to execute a contract for design services with Pacheco Coke for Phase 2 of the State Highway 171 Green Ribbon Landscape Program in the amount of $34,500. Welcome back, sir.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Terry Hughes, Director of Capital Transportation. As you now know, Weatherford has received funding for Phase 2 of the landscape program. The construction price is set at $431,000 for TxDOT and $34,000 for the city of Weatherford. Pacheco Coke designed Phase 1 of the project and is uniquely positioned to complete the design work in a prompt fashion for the rest at an amount of $34,500. Funds are available to pay for that cost, and staff recommends authorizing the city manager to execute the contract.
Questions on 9F? Hearing none, we'll call for a motion at this time. We do have a motion for approval by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder, second by Kevin Cleveland. Any discussions on 9F before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time. Indicate yea or nay, please. 9F passes unanimously. Item 10 on, thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Thank you.
Item 10 on the agenda, staff reports. 10A, report regarding new summer programs and the Cherry Park Pool. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Director, Parks, Recreation, and Special Events, Shannon Goodman. Tonight I've got Jacob Kirkpatrick and David Moat. Jacob's our Assistant Director and David Moat's our Recreation Manager. I'm just going to lead off and then turn it over to these two guys. We're very proud of what we've accomplished in the last 2 years in our recreation program. You know, as well as I do, we've done a great job at building up our park system, and then the last few years working on our special events. And so the final piece to be a complete service Parks and Recreation Department was really building up our the quality of our recreation programs. We started that about 2 years ago by hiring in Jacob as an assistant director who has a strong recreation background. This August of 2018, we were fortunate enough to get David Moat, who has almost 20 years experience of recreation programming. And those two guys really are the core for our recreation department. And they've sat down and they really put a lot of effort into programming and revamping some of our programs that we had over the last winter. And we were able to implement that this summer. Part of that was with the pool opening and then some summer programs. But with that, I want to turn it over to Jacob and kind of let them talk about those programs. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Jacob Kirkpatrick, Assistant Director of Parks, Recreation, and Special Events. We have a cool little slide for you. Kind of look at some pictures of our pool and our summer programs for this year while I talk through some notes. Cool. All right, so kind of touch on a little bit about the pool, and I'm going to turn it over to David, and he can talk about some of our programs that we'd had. But as you know, we opened up our pool back in June. We had a great turnout all summer long, so we're real excited about that. Part of that renovation project was that we did adjust our lap lane to the 25-yard, which is the regulation length for the pool. By doing that, we had our largest swim meet that we've ever had this summer at our swim meet with the TAF swim meet. We had cities that came that would never come before because they always said our pool was too long. They didn't want to swim.
Go back one slide.
Yeah, sure. Well, it may come back around.
Oh,
It'll come back around.
I think that's Cleveland on the slide.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
So we heard from the past that a lot of cities wouldn't come because our lap lane was too long. They didn't want their kids to swim that long. So they all came this summer and enjoyed our new pool. So we were really excited about that, having them in our city. A little bit about the numbers. Keep in mind, we did open up our pool late this summer by a couple weeks, about 2.5 weeks. Even with that, our attendance for the pool was still up over 30% from last year, even in that short amount of time. And then we had 827 registrations for our swim lesson program, which is a very large number. We had 47 after-hour party rentals, which is we do those on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. Basically, we shut the pool down. They have the whole pool to rent. We had 47 of those this summer, which is all we can hold. So that was really good for us as well. And then our revenue for the 2.5 months, which is a little bit shorter, was still up over 30% from last year. So as you can see, some great numbers from our pool this year. So I know you like those pictures, so you can.
Nice form.
I would like to point out that I'm going down the slide the correct way.
Yeah.
You didn't get yelled at by the
In the
lifeguard?
group that didn't go down the correct way.
All right, keep going, please.
Last thing I want to touch on is another thing we're excited about is we were invited by Water Technology, which is the company that designed our pool, to speak at the TRAP's annual conference in Galveston in February to talk about how you can renovate your pool using an existing shell. It's kind of a newer concept, and they want to get that out there. So we're really excited to get in front of the state and talk about our project and showcase what we've done here in Weatherford. So that'll be in February, so we're really excited about that. So I'll turn it over to David, and he can talk to you about all the cool stuff.
Thank you for everything.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. First, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak in front of you tonight. David Moat, Recreation Manager, City of Weatherford. Brad told me out in the hallway to be brief, so I know he was joking, but I took him very seriously, so I whittled down my 45-minute report to 30 minutes, so we'll try to get you out of here quickly. So as Jacob previously mentioned, we had just an outstanding summer with the pool, with the renovation, everything like that. As the Recreation Manager, I also oversee all of athletics, facility rentals, summer programming, recreational programming, and the pool during the summer. I'm just going to touch briefly on each one of those areas. Like I said, Jacob already mentioned the pool. In athletics, what we did with our softball leagues, our 8-week seasons, and due to all the rain we had last fall, last spring, those 8-week seasons turned into 12-week seasons, 13-week season. It just drug on and on and on. So some of the teams got burned out and things like that. So this summer, what we did was we implemented doubleheader leagues. And by doing that, it shortened the seasons to 4 weeks and also left wiggle room for rainouts or anything else that came up. So by doing that, we were able to get 2 full seasons in this summer. So we had 2 seasons in, totaling of 51 teams summer alone. So normally if we'd have done 8-week season, we'd only had, just 1 league. So by doing that, we doubled the amount of teams we had. So in the teams like that, we have teams coming from White Settlement, Azle, Springtown, Mineral Wells and things like that. So they like coming and playing 2 games. In regards to facility rentals, when I first got here, all of our facilities, Harburger, Cherry Park, and Mount Pleasant were inundated with renters using the nonprofit status. So what we did was we pushed all those wanting to use the nonprofit status out to Mount Pleasant. And surprisingly enough, a lot of these people didn't even know that facility even existed. So they, went out there and they never knew it existed. So not only did they go out there, they got to see the history of the wonderful building and was able to open up a lot of space for the other buildings to be rented out for people paying the full price, full fees. Last and thirdly, we implemented some new summer programs. We had 2 summer camps this summer that were new to Weatherford. We had an all-day summer camp that was held out at Cherry Park, and we offered half-day camps, which would either be at 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And with the all-day park camp, they went on weekly field trips. They swam at the new pool. They played out in the playground. There's just absolutely the perfect place to have an all-day camp. So, and with that, it was an 11-week session. So they registered weekly, and all 11 weeks made. We averaged about 15 campers per week, so that was outstanding for a first-year program. And also, we did very well with the not quite as well with the half-day programs, but we're looking to tweak that next summer with more of the technology camps, which seem to be popular, like drones, computer classes, and things like that. So, in addition, we also held a tennis camp that did also very well. So we served about 330 kids for the summer through the various summer camps we offered. So, in regards to that, I just wanted to kind of give you some numbers here. Budget, I know no one likes to hear budget, but these are actually good numbers. For instance, fiscal year 18, we had a budgeted goal of $233,000. The actual total revenue that we brought in that year was $204,000, so that was 87% cost recovery. 2019, we had a budgeted goal of $232,000, and we actually brought in $297,000 in recreational programs. So it's about a $93,000 increase, 128% cost recovery. So we're excited about the future, and we're planning bigger and better things. So we can't wait to get started and get planning. So again, I'd like to thank you guys for looking forward to things to come.
Very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11 on the agenda is future agenda items. Council? That, City Manager?
Yes, sir. Good.
Item 12 on the agenda is citizen comments on non-agenda items. Any takers? Hearing none, we'll move to item 13, which is adjournment. Motion by Kevin Cleveland for adjournment, second by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder. If there's any discussion, you better hurry. We're going to call for a vote. This time. Indicate yea or nay, please. Council's adjourned unanimously at 7:39 p.m.